The origin of the mark of the beast began in the book of Genesis. In the book of Genesis, as in the entire Bible, there exists a form of practical logic which is no longer taught to the world. This form of logic is not only present within the words and parable code of the stories, but within the specifically designed constructs of the stories which were set forth to inspire thought, contemplation, and attention to logic, reason, and compassion. In applying this logic, we find that it was not a tree itself which God instructed Adam and Eve not to eat of, but rather it was the fallen and fermented fruit of a tree which they were forbidden to consume. We know that this tree was an apple tree, and the fruit which they were forbidden to eat of was in fact a fallen apple. The symbology of specific things, such as the serpent, alludes to not only who deceived them, but also how they were deceived. This symbolically draws our attentions to the forked tongue of the serpent, which suggests to us the method by which the serpent deceived them, which is by placing a rotten and fermented apple on the forked branch of the tree. And so it was that Adam and Eve, being likened to children, did not have the wisdom, and as such, thinking that because it was in the tree, that it was safe to eat, Eve ate of the apple and shared it with Adam. Now, when a fruit is disconnected from its natural umbilical cord, which in this case is a branch, it begins to die, rot, and ferment, being likened to the poison of a strong drink, which not only impaired their abilities of logic and reason, but also impaired their connectedness with God, or in other words, their ability to rationalize the way of life which God had set forth for them. And so it was that Adam and Eve lay together, and they conceived Cain under the influence of the fallen and fermented fruit. In time, Cain was born marked and afflicted, without the three primary humanistic attributes of logic, reason, or compassion. And because of this absence, Cain was not human, but was likened to a beast. Such is the symbology of the apple, where if one takes an apple and severs its top, what they will see is a five-pointed star. Now this symbolically explains to us that when an apple hangs from a tree, it is pure and upright, representing the correct perception as the upright star. However, when an apple falls from the tree, it almost always lands on its side, whereby the star of that apple is then altered, and is representative of the correct perception, and what some in symbology refer to as the star of Satan, and in some corners of the world, blue apple. In addition, the name Abel itself is a word code, whereby transposing the letter B, it becomes a P, presenting to us the phonic of the word apple as A-P-E-L, which is a direct reference to both the cause and effect. And so it was that Abel and Cain gave God their offerings, and God accepted Abel's offering over Cain's, simply because Cain's offering was of plucked things, which reminded God of the cause and effect of Cain's own affliction. And so, Cain, being absent of logic, reason, and compassion, killed Abel in a primal fit of rage, an act of a beast marked. Now with this in mind, it is vital that you clearly understand that the mark of the beast, as it was, began as a corrupt perception and affliction of the mind, being the mark in the head, from which the corrupt act or action occurs, representing the mark in the hand. Thus, the practical knowledge and wisdom which is presented here informs us that it is from chemical things by which the mark of the beast occurs, and from such an occurrence, beasts are born and altered, which are those who devise, usually, rather than create, people who destroy, rather than preserve. And so the wisdom and logic which is presented to us here, which we are unable to understand, is that while we are all genetically similar, each and every individual is genetically unique, where the wisdom of the saying, what is one's potion is another's poison, is both a reality and a matter of fact. So, how does this translate in today's times? First, you must understand that due to globalization and forced migration, people are even more genetically diverse today than they were in previous times. To give you a brief synopsis of what this means, long ago, every tribe of people lived in specific areas where they adapted to the specific kinds of chemicals, plants, animals, vegetables, fruits, and minerals in their specific areas. And so, they knew what things were and were not good for them because they had learned it through the process of trial and error. And so they avoided those certain and specific things that they knew to cause illness of the mind and body, and they lived well in their own specific environments. Next, it is vital that you understand that because each and every individual is genetically unique, that there is no possible logical, truthful way that anyone anywhere can ever claim or suggest that their products, no matter what they are either good or safe for all to consume. A simple testament to this reality is presented to us in the simple fact that some people cannot consume such seemingly simple and assumed safe for all things, such as apples, strawberries, nuts, or yeast. As for many people, these simple everyday things can cause them certain death. With this in mind, it is also important to understand the reality that evil does not initially attack a person in supernatural ways. In fact, what it does is that it takes natural things and alters them into poisonous drugs and chemicals, which first infiltrate the body either by way of direct consumption or through absorption into the body through contact with the skin. So let me explain in detail the process of how evil functions in real-world ways and real-world terms. First, one unknowingly consumes a drug or chemical which they are led to believe is safe for all. This drug or chemical then either inhibits the communications between the body and mind, causing illness, or sometimes these illnesses manifest as physical ones, and sometimes as mental ones. In the case of mental illness, the individual's humanistic attributes are suspended to such extent that they perform acts or actions of trespass against another individual. Now, because that individual has never explained the process in practical real-world ways of why and how this occurs, they carry within them the burdens of the sorrows of contempt, resentment, and hate. In time, these sorrows, being so powerful a burden, manifest into real physical pain, where the individual, having no relief, then seeks relief from the pain by trying to self-medicate, which only numbs them, where over time, more and more self-medicating is required to the point where the individual either dies or reenacts the same or similar trespasses which had occurred against them, against another individual, where the chain of the burdens of heavy laden are continued and built, where forgiveness is never given nor received, which absolutely is necessary for salvation and passage into heaven. And so, people and the world must know that the only way to break this chain is to provide the people with the real-world practical explanation, so that they have the proper defense against the vices of evil, where each and every person, every individual, is instructed to remove as many chemical products from their lives as possible, and systematically discover and remove all things which are detrimental to them as genetically unique individuals. So now the question is, how do we repair the damage itself? Well, aside from removing the exposure to as many chemicals as possible from your life, including the systematic finding and eliminating of those things from your diet which are not promoting to your health and the functionality of your mind, once these things are removed from your life and you have prevented them from inhibiting the mind-body communication on a cellular level, you should know that God has equipped you with the ability to heal. This includes but is not limited to regenerating dead tissue. Now, there are two ways in which this is done. For some, this is done by envisioning the areas of the body which are in need of repair, where you send the cells of your own body to those areas, like an army of workers, to repair those areas. For some, this is easy, while others require audio coaching to help them do this. And so, this is the end of my broadcast transmission. I sincerely thank you for listening, and I wish you and yours the greatest health and well-being physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I pray that you pass this information on to your loved ones, so that they may also be armed with a great defense and protection. May God bless you all.